Workers were digging for drainage lines, but what they discovered beneath the ground left them in shock. In a quiet town in Northern California, a group of construction workers were busy in the hills. Their job was to dig into the earth and place new drainage lines. At first, the work was normal, just dirt and rock. Then their equipment struck something solid. It was metal, smooth and unyielding. The crew thought it could be an old tank, but when they tried to break it open, it wouldn't move. A specialist team was called to investigate. They came with helmets, lights, and supplies. They stepped inside the tunnel and began walking forward. It was completely silent. The deeper they went, the colder the air became. The ground beneath their feet was smooth. There were no signs of animals or insects. After hours of walking, the tunnel widened into a massive chamber. What stood there left them frozen in shock. The officials sealed the tunnel, but rumors spread faster than the concrete they poured. The construction crew never forgot what they had seen, and though they had been warned to keep silent, whispers slipped into nearby pubs, late-night conversations, and among families who noticed how different the men looked after that job. They were no longer the same. They avoided talking about Jacob, yet his absence haunted them more than anything else. Weeks passed. The town grew restless. Strange tremors rattled the ground, always at night, always near the hill where the tunnel had been buried. Locals complained of a low hum that echoed through the soil, a vibration that shook windows and made dogs bark endlessly. Some people swore they saw blue lights flickering in the distance, glowing faintly under the earth as if something alive was still moving down there. One of the men from the original crew, a younger worker named Daniel, couldn't sleep. He woke almost every night drenched in sweat, Jacob's voice whispering in his dreams. Sometimes he dreamt of the golden throne, sometimes of the glowing blue crystals, but always of Jacob standing perfectly still, his face blank. The nightmares became too much, and Daniel decided he couldn't ignore them anymore. He had to go back. At first, no one agreed. The crew had been warned. Officials had threatened to take their jobs and more if they spoke of it again. But fear of the unknown weighed heavier than any threat. Finally, 3 of the men, including Daniel, decided to return in secret. They gathered ropes, flashlights, and food. And one moonless night, they crept to the site where the tunnel had been sealed. The earth was packed tight, but cracks remained. It didn't take long before they found a way through, prying open a gap large enough to crawl inside. The air hit them immediately, cold, heavy, and still. The silence was crushing, and every sound they made echoed far ahead. They lowered themselves back into the tunnel, the same smooth walls stretching endlessly forward. The deeper they went, the louder that faint hum became. At first, they thought it was in their heads, a trick of nerves, but soon it vibrated in their chests, a steady rhythm pulsing through the walls like a heartbeat. When they reached the vast underground hall again, it looked unchanged. The glowing symbols on the walls shimmered faintly, as if waiting for someone to return. The dust still covered the stone houses, the staircases, and the narrow streets of the buried city. It was a place frozen in time, but alive in a way that none of them understood. They moved slowly, their lights cutting across forgotten walls and broken statues. Daniel's eyes darted constantly, searching for the hidden passage where Jacob had vanished. It didn't take long to find. The panel was still slightly shifted, a faint crack in the floor where Jacob had gone down. The others hesitated, but Daniel didn't. He tied a rope around his waist, handed the other end to his friend Michael, and lowered himself into the passage. His boots hit the ground below with a dull thud. He swung the light around. The chamber was just as described. Crystals, hundreds of them, glowing with a blue radiance that seemed almost alive. And there, in the far corner, stood Jacob. His face was pale, his eyes wide, fixed on the glowing wall. His lips moved as if whispering, though no sound came out. He didn't blink, didn't look at Daniel, didn't even acknowledge he was there. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest. He stepped closer. "Jacob," he said softly, his voice trembling. Jacob didn't move. His lips kept twitching, shaping words Daniel couldn't understand. The light from the wall pulsed brighter, washing the chamber in waves of blue. Daniel felt dizzy, his legs weak, but he forced himself forward. He reached out and touched Jacob's shoulder. The instant his hand made contact, Jacob's head snapped toward him. His eyes were glowing faintly, reflecting the crystal's blue light. His mouth opened, and in a voice that wasn't fully his own, he whispered, "It's not meant for us." Daniel froze. His breath caught in his throat. He stumbled backward, pulling at the rope to be lifted, but before he could call out, Jacob's hand shot forward, gripping his arm with unnatural strength. His fingers felt like steel, pressing into Daniel's skin. "You shouldn't have come back," Jacob said louder this time, his voice echoing unnaturally in the chamber. The crystals flared brighter, vibrating with the same strange hum that filled the air. Above, Michael and the others heard the noise. The rope jerked violently, nearly pulling them forward. They shouted Daniel's name, but his voice never came. Instead, a deep rumble echoed from below, shaking the entire chamber. Dust fell from the ceiling and cracks spread through the stone walls. Terrified, Michael tied the rope to a pillar and climbed down himself, determined not to leave his friend. When his boots touched the floor, he saw Daniel kneeling in front of Jacob, his eyes wide with fear. Jacob's grip was unrelenting, his arm glowing faintly blue where it touched Daniel's skin. The wall behind him shimmered as if alive, waves of light rippling across its surface. Shapes seemed to move inside it, shadows pressing against the barrier as though something on the other side was trying to break through. Michael grabbed a crowbar from his belt and swung it at Jacob's arm. The sound rang out sharp and hollow, but Jacob didn't flinch. His eyes turned toward Michael, glowing brighter now, almost blinding. His lips curled into a smile that didn't belong to him. "It sees you too," Jacob whispered. The crystals cracked, their blue light bursting into streams of energy that raced along the chamber walls. The hum turned into a roar, shaking the ground beneath them. Michael shouted for the others to pull the rope. But before he could grab Daniel, the wall split open. A blinding light poured out, followed by a gust of wind that knocked them all to the ground. From the wall emerged a shape, tall and shifting, made of pure light, but bound in shadows. It filled the chamber with a presence so heavy that breathing became impossible. The men scrambled to their feet, dragging Daniel away from Jacob's grip. But the figure only grew taller, its form bending the air around it. Jacob stepped forward, his body trembling, his face twisted between pain and devotion. "I belong to it now," he said, his voice echoing as if spoken by many. Daniel shouted, "No! Jacob, fight it!" But his words were drowned by the roar of the chamber. The light wrapped around Jacob, lifting him off the ground. His scream tore through the air, and then he was gone, pulled into the wall of light that sealed behind him as if nothing had happened. Silence followed. The crystals dimmed, the hum faded, and the chamber returned to stillness. Only the dust hung heavy in the air. The men stood frozen, their minds barely able to comprehend what they had witnessed. Daniel collapsed to his knees, his arm throbbing where Jacob had touched him. The skin glowed faintly, the same eerie blue light. Michael grabbed him, pulling him up, and shouted for the others to climb out. None of them argued. They scrambled up the rope, dragging Daniel with them, desperate to escape the chamber before anything else awoke. When they reached the surface, the night sky had never felt so alive. The wind cut cold across their faces, but it was air that didn't crush their lungs, and they breathed it like men starved. Behind them, the earth rumbled one last time before falling silent. Days later, officials returned again. The entire site was covered with concrete, guarded by armed men, and declared off limits. The crew disappeared from public view, each one relocated to different towns, their contracts dissolved, their names removed from records. But Daniel could not escape what had followed him. At night, his arm still glowed faintly, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. He heard whispers when he closed his eyes. Jacob's voice, but layered with others, speaking in words he could not understand. And in the distance, deep beneath the ground, he swore he still felt that same hum, waiting, patient, alive. And though the officials buried the site, the truth could not stay hidden. Because sometimes at night, locals still claimed to see a faint blue glow rising from the hills, as if the underground city was still breathing, waiting for the day someone else dared to return.